There we go. So just like regular dimensions, on page 1-102 of the book, we have we really have laid out all of the settings that you'll need to create a site dimension style, right? And I guess maybe the
You're not sharing your
oh,
screen.
I'm not. Thank you. There we go. Okay. I guess maybe the first thing that I want to talk about is how exactly a site dimension is different from a regular old dimension. Okay, so let me just pull up something here real quick. Let's see, downloads. There we go. Okay, so when you were working on your site plan assignments, let's see here. I don't want to pass it up. Here we are. I want you to remember this is what the dimensions on your site plan look like, right? So when you're working professionally, whether you're, an engineer or an architect, doing any work with any type of site plan, you're going to get some type of dimension that looks like this, right? Which is very much different than what an architectural dimension looks like, right? Which is this, okay? An architectural dimension, like we talked about, we have a dimension line. We have these extension lines that extend down to objects, right, that we dimension to. We have these little tick marks on our dimensions. We have a number here at the center, generally at the center, and it's going to be in feet and inches, right? As opposed to something on a site plan where we don't have any dimension lines, we don't have any extension lines, right? And the dimension that we get is a surveyor unit with a length as opposed to something that is formatted in feet and inches, okay? So we're creating a dimension style just like we would any normal architectural dimension, but we're changing some of the settings so that it is specific to a site plan, okay? As a civil engineer, right, something you will use constantly, right? As an architect, you'll use it several times throughout a project, right? Probably the first time you'll use it is likely going to be when you draw the site plan for whatever your project you're working on, right? Whether it's residential or commercial or whatever, you still do have to interact with the site, right? And you have to draw it and you have to dimension it so that when you put your drawings into the city for permit, that they know what the project boundary is, right? And they know how the architecture is going to interact with that project boundary, okay? All right, so I'm just gonna pull this off to the side here and let's talk about how we're gonna dimension, okay? I'm going to create a dimension style for my site plan dimensions. So I'm going to do exactly what I would do for any type of architectural dimension, right? And I'm also going to make our dimensions for our site plan annotative, okay? So I'm going to, now let me just come back. If you go to the book, let me go back, 1-102 is where I want to be, 1-102. Here is dimension styles for site plans. So we will create a new dimension style. It will be annotative, okay? The main difference between a regular architectural dimension style and a site plan dimension style will be kind of the graphics, okay? So we're gonna suppress the dimension lines, right? So those lines where the dimensions just sit up above it, we're gonna suppress those, which means they don't show, they're not visible, okay? We're gonna suppress the extension lines. So those vertical lines that extend from the object up to the dimension line, those are going to be turned off as well, okay? We're not gonna have any arrowheads or architectural ticks because we don't have extension or dimension lines. All of our layers, right? So the color of our text is going to be similar to regular dimensions, right? So we're going to have a layer, it's going to be called A-ano-dims, right? And we're going to, all of the colors will essentially be the same, okay? We will have a text style associated with this, which is great. The biggest difference between an architectural dimension style and, A site dimension style and an architectural dimension style, though, will be that we have to add this weird scale factor into our dimension style, okay? This is really weird to me, and it's going to be really weird to you, but it works, right? It's weird because when we draw our site plans in AutoCAD, we draw them in decimal format, right? We draw them in decimal format, but in actuality, we're drawing them in decimal inches, okay? Which means that they're accurate for a civil engineer, but if an architect wants to use them, they're 12 times too small, right? So for an architect to use a site plan, you have to take that site plan and you have to scale it up by a factor of 12, right? And that essentially converts decimal inches into feet and inches, okay? So we have to kind of do this weird little conversion to be able to use a site plan architecturally in the first place, right? But the weird thing about that is that when I actually scale it up by a factor of 12, you know, in order to use it architecturally, it actually throws the dimension of it off, funny enough, right? So when you go to dimension something that, let me just go back to my AutoCAD here, right? The length that this is going to be, I'm in decimal formats, but it's 2163. Let me change to architectural. What am I looking for here? Hold on. Let me just look at my book here real quick. Make sure that I need to look at the dimensions of the other thing real quick. Hold on. Okay, so what I want to do here, okay, is this site plan, when, you know, this says 180 foot 3 3/4 of an inch, right, which is great for architects. But in actuality, what I want to do is I want my site plan to be in architectural units, but I want the dimension to read as if it were in decimal inches, all right, which is completely backwards thinking, okay? But the system works, right? So the workflow for a site plan, when you start a brand new site plan, you draw it in decimal inches. To use it architecturally, you scale it up by a factor of 12, okay? But when you want to draw it, or if you want to, well, I guess redraw it essentially, okay, you have to dimension it as if it were in decimal inches. So we're kind of like, you know, drawing it to size it up to then dimension it so it looks like it's scaled back down. It's kind of a roundabout way of doing things, right? But the system works, okay? And so what we have to do, 1-102, hold on, is we have to add a scale factor into our dimension style to make that happen. To make it so that when the dimension reads on the site plan, it reads in decimal inches, and it reads as if it were scaled back down by a factor of 12, even though it's not, okay? So what we'll be doing here is our units will be in decimal. We will add a scale factor to our site plan dimension. It will be 0.8333, which is 1/12, essentially, okay? So this is going to allow that dimension to read as if it were 1/12 the size that it needs to be. Okay, so that's going to be kind of the main difference between architectural dimensions and site dimensions. Okay, all right, so let's go through this and let's make it happen. I'm going to follow this exactly from the booklet, right, 1-102. So when you're doing your homework, if you get confused, again, although we are going to be using annotative dimensions, everything else is the same, right? So all of the settings, suppressing these lines, all of that stuff is going to be the same.
So if I understand you, we draw it and don't change the dimension scale factor, and then you scale it up, it's going to show 12 times as large, so 1 foot's going to show 12 feet long, etc.
Yes, if I'm following you, I'm following the idea of what you're saying, and it sounds correct to me.
Okay.
Yes, exactly. Okay. Now I just need to make sure this drawing that I just pulled up, I think it's correct. Hopefully we won't have any weird things happen, okay? I'm hoping that it has been drawn so that it's 12 times the size it needs to be. It seems like it is, but we'll just kind of go with it and see what happens, right? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here to my dimension tool palette, which is under the annotate tab. And I have a standard dimension style created here. And what I'd like to do is create a new dimension style, right? So I click on this little flyout. I'm going to click on new, okay? And I'm going to call this site dimension, all right? I'm going to make it annotative. Okay. Now, a little look into the future. You're going to have to dimension some of the site plans you've already created, right? So if you maybe open up your site plan or you open up your template right now and you follow along, this will be correct so that all you have to do is dimension your assignment, essentially, right? The hard work of creating the dimension style, if you follow along, will already be done, okay? So I've got my site dimension here. It's going to be annotative. I'm going to hit continue. And the first thing I'm going to do, I look at my book. I'm going to, what's under lines? I'm going to suppress my dimension line 1, and you see it turns off, and 2. Right? It goes halvesies. The second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the color here to by layer. Ooh, hopefully. Huh. It's kind of odd. By block. Won't let me change the color.
Can you click annotated on the first group?
Oh, you know what? You're right. They're turned off. Sorry. I was like, what's happening? Sorry, what did you say?
On the create new dimension style, that first screen where you wrote the name, do you select annotated on that screen?
Yes. Yep. Nope, you're right. Sorry. I was thinking, not thinking I was doing a site dimension. So because I suppressed dimension line 1 and 2, it's not letting me change the color of it because they will be there, right? Makes sense. The system works. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is suppress extension line 1 and 2, right? So essentially now I just have a number, right? And it is in decimal format here, okay? So I'm going to now come over to symbols and arrows, and we want none here, none. Okay, so let's see. We're going to leave all these things alone. We're going to go over to text. And again, I'm just following my book. I go to text, and if I already have a text style generated in this document, I can choose it. If I don't, I can create a new one by clicking on this little ellipsis right here and adding a new dimension style. So I could click new, and we'll call this site dimension style and hit OK. We want this annotative, and let's say that the text height's going to be 330 seconds. Okay, I'm in decimal units right now, and so it takes this number 0.09 is 330 seconds converted into a decimal fraction, like taking the fraction and converting it into a decimal. Okay, so I have that created. I'm going to hit Arial, looks good, set current, close that, and just make sure that my site dimension style is selected.
What did you put for the width factor?
Just left it at 1.
Just left it at 1?
Yep. Okay. I can already tell from this, I'm going to have a few things I need to change after the fact, but we'll talk about that. That's good. All right, so I'm on page 1-103 now, right? And I look here and everything looks pretty good. This is going to be above, and this is in the book. This is going to be centered left to right here. And instead of horizontal, I want this aligned with dimension style, dimension line, right? So if I dimension this object, I want this to be parallel with it, okay? So I've done all those things, look good. I'm gonna go to fit next. And in my book here, right, I changed the page. And the biggest thing usually for kind of the old way of going about dimensioning would be to set this scale here. But because I'm using annotative, I'm not gonna do that, right? Annotative makes it so that I don't have to do that, essentially, okay? I'm going to change this to text, and I think, oh, Jeff likes it over the dimension line with the leader, good. We'll change it to that. But essentially on page 1-104, which is what I'm looking at in my book, all of my settings match, minus the scale here. Okay. I'm going to go to primary units. We are going to, we're going to change this actually here. We're going to change this to architectural. Our precision, we can change this. Jeff has it set to 1/4 of an inch. Okay, we'll go with it. We'll go with it, 1/4 of an inch. Right, again, I'm just typing these right from the book. I'm going to apply a scale factor to this. So instead of this being 1, I'm going to type in 1/12, enter, and I get 0.0833333. Okay. The other thing I need to do, I need to add a suffix. I need to add a footmark here. Okay. Again, one of those weird things that we have to do to make this look like it's a, you know, a decimal inches dimension, when in actuality we're kind of faking it, right? It's not. So I type in the 1/112. I add a suffix footmark here so that that shows up in my number, and that's it. Okay, so here's what my dimension style is going to look like. Now, you're thinking this is the last of the finagling. It's not. There's a couple of other weird things we have to do to make this work. But again, the system works for what we're using it for.
Can you go over that whole process one more time?
Sure. Okay, I'm going to just go back to the lines tab here. I suppressed my dimension lines. I suppressed my extension lines. Symbols and arrows, none. Okay. So I'm trying to make sure.
Doing by layer.
But they won't be there, they'll be hidden, so we don't really, it won't affect it, right? Sorry, I just want to make sure I get everything from the different settings. Okay, so these are going to be none. And I'm going to go over to text. Our text is going to be whatever style we either have defined in there, or I can click on this little ellipsis and define a new style here, okay, with a 3/32 inch height. Okay. I'm going to choose that style. Oh, text color, I want that to be by layer. Okay. We want our text placement to be above where the dimension line would have been, right? Horizontally centered, and we want it aligned with the dimension line.
The text is annotated too, right?
Yes, it is. And that will be defined in the text style. So I'm going to come back here to fit. This will be text. This will be over the dimension line with the leader. We're going to check annotative here. Primary units, we're going to have this be architectural, right? Now I'm on page 1-104 of your book, right? So if you forget this, which I understand, it's not really complicated, but there's just a lot of settings you have to change, right? So if you get lost in them, we'll have the video online and you'll have the book to follow. This will be architectural.
Everything's the same as the book except we're doing annotated.
Correct. Yep, correct. 1/4 of an inch, right? We have to add a little suffix here, and 1/12 scale. Okay. So site dimensions, I click on that. I'm going to choose set current and close that out. Okay. All right, so sorry, I think this will work, but again, I didn't draw this one. This is just an example I had, so I'm hoping it's already been scaled by 12 and looks and is great. But what I want to do now is I want to apply that dimension style to my actual site plan. Okay. All right. So we are going to be using an aligned dimension, and I'm going to choose aligned because I want my dimension to physically be parallel to this line. I don't want it to be just horizontal sitting on top of this line, right? I want it to kind of flow with it. Now, before I do that, okay, I need to choose the annotated scale of my view, right? So I'm going to think about how I'm going to print this before I start dimensioning it, right? This is going to be a workflow that you're going to have to do all the time. You draw something, you set the annotation, you create annotative dimensions and text and all that annotation type stuff, then you need to annotate. But then, oh, wait a minute, I need to think about the scale that this is going to be printed at before I assign annotation to it. Okay, so I'm going to set this up to print. I think this needs to be on an 11 by 17. Let me look here. Is that what this was? Let me set this up real quick. This is a good review of Paperspace. Control P, Adobe PDF. We'll do ArchD. No, sorry. 11 by 17. Extents, center the plot. This is going to be portrait, LaserJet CTB, apply to layout. Okay, so now I have my portrait style viewport. I'm going to create a layer that is non-printable for the viewport. So layer properties, new layer, viewport, right? Lots of good review stuff. And we'll make it non-printable. Yes. Yep. Okay. So I'm just going to make sure that my viewport is on the viewport layer so that it doesn't print. Everything looks good, right? I'm going to grab this and I'm going to scale it. 1/16 is probably too large. We'll do 3/32. Oh, wait, we need to go the other direction. 1/32 looks pretty good to me. Click, click. So I'm going to center this, click, click out. Okay, I have this scaled at 3/32 of an inch is equal to a foot. Okay, which means that when I add my annotation, I'm going to change my annotation of my current view to 3/32. Okay, and then I'm going to dimension this. We still have a couple of steps, right? And let me say this, for the architecture students, this will be something that you don't do all the time. And honestly, when I was working professionally, right, I mean, I teach this every semester, we do it every semester, but when I was working professionally, I would do this 3 times a year. So every time I had to do it, I would think, okay, how do I do this again? How do I draw the site plan again? How do I do surveyor units again, right? So I would have to refresh my memory every time I did it. But, you know, it's because it's not one of those things you use every single day, right? You use it to establish a project. Once you have it established, you draw things, you know, you draw things on it. You put architecture on it. You add hardscape and landscaping and add easements and lots of stuff. But it is one of those things where I would have to remind myself every time I did it of how it was going to go together, right? Okay, so I'm going to come up to annotate again. I'm going to come over here to align dimensions, click. And it says specify the first extension line. I'm just going to hit enter and I'm going to click and select the line to put where I want to put that piece of text. Click. And it's tiny, right? It's 3/32 of an inch. I'm going to go to my layout. Oop. Oh, I didn't do it the right size, did I? Shoot. Well, there we go. I did it wrong. I'm going to undo that. Control Z. Undo, oops, undo. I think I chose 3/32 as a scale and then realized it wasn't the right scale.
Did you scale up the paper scale or did you scale it up?
The scale up what, sorry?
The plots, did you scale it up on the paper scale? Paper scale view, yeah.
In Paperspace? I did scale it, yeah. So I selected my view and I changed it to 1/32 of an inch. Yep. So it's 1/32, not 3/32. Kind of a big difference. So now I need to add my annotative scale, which will be 1/32 instead of 3, right? And I'm going to add my site dimensions. Aligned, enter, click, much better, click. Oh, I've done something wrong. What have I done wrong here? Let's see. Oh, this is what happens when I...
Did you take out the broken like you know it was broken before the plot?
Oh, no, I didn't. We'll talk about that. Let me talk about that. But let me see what I have that is wrong here. Something is not right. Hold on a second. I wonder if it's this, like I said, I wonder if it's this drawing. I always hate jumping into drawings that I haven't drawn because, hold on one second, let me just draw. So we've got our decimal units. So ideally what should happen is my dimensions should pop in. Oh, no, site dimensions. Let me look at my site dimension style again, modify. Okay, symbols and arrows, everything looks good. Text looks good. Fit looks good. This 1/12, suffix there. Ah, I'm pretty sure that is wrong. I think that needs to be decimal. Yeah. Okay. There we go. Okay, so looks like there's one small mistake in the book. And funny enough, I questioned it as I did it, and I should have just listened to myself, right? But this needs to be decimal right here, okay, not architectural. Because what you saw was happening is when I added my dimension, it put the feet and mark inches in there, and we don't want that. We want it to be decimal.
It's a decimal. That's on 1-104.
1-104? Mine says architectural.
You have an older book.
Maybe. It's entirely possible. Maybe he found the error and updated it. I'm going to mark that, actually. Okay. All right. So I've added my decimal, my units here. And in doing so, I have gone back a step and accidentally did that. So aligned, enter, click, enter. Oop. I missed it. Click. There we go. Okay. So that one is 205 feet, which, if I remember right, seems correct. So I'm going to click on aligned again, hit enter, click on this object, click, enter, enter, click, enter, enter, click. Okay, enter, enter, click. Right, looks pretty good. Okay, so I have my bearing in here, right, or my dimension, but I don't have my bearing in here, which is not very useful, right? So this is 180.31 feet in length, but I don't have the north, south, east, and west surveyor unit type stuff happening, right? Which is the whole point of this site plan, is to be able to see the dimension of it and then also the bearing, okay? So here's another kind of weird thing that we have to do to finish this site plan up. We have to manually add in that text, okay?
Mine's, I'm thinking it's shooting out inches.
Uh-huh.
So instead of like the 205 feet, I have 2,460.
Yours might be scaled up 12 times too many. Did you scale yours? So grab the whole thing, scale it. Yep, 1/12. Okay, now zoom in. Yep, yours is scaled. Yep, okay. All right, but now your dimension is obviously way too big, right? Because you, okay. All right, so what we need to do now is we need to type in those surveyor units. And you're like, looking at this, right? If I had just drawn this, or somebody had given it to me, I wouldn't know what the surveyor units were to enter them manually into my dimension style, right? So somehow we have to be able to read them off of this actual line, all right? So
Hey,
here's,
Shelly,
yep.
my it's not showing up the text on mine.
Should you, your dimension style, set dimensions, and line dimensions. And you changed your, this to that, right? There you go.
There we go.
Okay. So that's tricky, right? He
Yeah.
dimensioned his, but didn't have the correct annotated scale, and it was invisible, essentially. Well, it was likely really just tiny, 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 tiny,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
When we, just to be clear, when we first create the dimension style, do we select annotate it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. Yes.
It's not showing.
What's that?
It just wasn't showing up with anything when I.
So it's going to be when you actually generate it. So if
Yeah.
you were to cancel out of that, you would click it even before that stage, right? So you would click new, like right there, yep, and then you would click new, and then right there.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
sorry, that was showing up.
Okay.
I mean, the actual dimensioning wasn't, so I was just gonna double check.
So what could have happened is if you go, so you actually did dimension it and it's not showing there. Is that right?
Yeah, so like if I go dimension.
So what's happening is your annotation scale is 1 to 1, right? Which means you have a 3/32 inch tall piece of text next to your, so if you go 1/16.
116.
Okay, now dimension it. Oh wait, yeah, that's right. There you go. So you wanted to actually maybe do an aligned dimension so that it doesn't go horizontal. It goes in alignment with the line of the.
I'll just double check I can follow it up.
All right. So if you forget to change your annotative scale here, right? Mine says 1/32. If you forget to change it and you leave it at like 1 to 1, you see how I have my dimension there, but it is not showing up. And likely it's still there somewhere. There it is. It's still there. Oh, do you see it? It's just a little guy, right? Just tiny. So what is happening there is it's anticipating you printing this at 1 to 1 scale, which means that that little piece of text would be 3/32 of an inch tall. And that's next to, something that is gigantic, like a site plan. So the scale of it is not allowing that text to be seen. So what you'd have to do here is change this, and your dimension styles pop back up. Okay. Now when I go to my layout, right, I have my text. But again, I don't have my bearing. Okay. And so I need to add that text in. And somehow I actually need to find out what that bearing is. Visually, I can't look at this and tell what it is, right? So what's nice about AutoCAD, though, is that bearing information is inherently built into the line, right? So if somebody had given me this site plan and it's drawn correctly, I can look at the information that is attached to the line and find out that bearing, right? Of course, if I had been given an assignment or had been given a site plan that had that on there, I could just type it in, okay? So what I'm going to do is call the list, LI. LI, enter. I'm going to click on my object, click, enter, and by doing that, I get a lot of information about this object, including the angle on the XY plane, which is my surveyor unit. So I'm going to select that, Control C, copy, and I'll do this again so that everybody can see it. Control C. Okay, to get out of it, I'm going to just close out. And now I need to paste that information into this dimension, right? I'm going to click on that dimension. Here's the best part about AutoCAD. We can cheat anything in AutoCAD, right? I could type an entirely new number for the dimension and AutoCAD wouldn't care, right? Which is good and bad. Revit won't let me do this, but AutoCAD will. I'm going to take my cursor and go to the end of that number, space, Control V, paste, close my text editor, and there is my surveyor unit. Now I can format this any way I'd like. So if I click on it, I could, click on this, Control C, copy, delete that. I could also put it Control V, paste in front of that dimension, close text editor, right? But the basic premise behind this is I have to double click very fast on that dimension and add the text into it. I could also hit enter, right? Close text editor, and I could have that text kind of stacked one on the other. Yep. Let's do the bearing on this one down here. So first I need to figure out what the bearing is, right? If I don't have it. LI list, enter. So I type LI, enter. I click on the object I want to list, enter. And it tells me all the information I need to know about that object, okay? So including the angle in the XY plane, which is the bearing. Okay. Control C, copy. Now I'm just going to click, double click on that text. Control V, paste, add a space, and hit close text editor. That work? So really, in essence, we've cheated the system here, right? We've totally cheated the system. We've drawn something, we've scaled it, we've created a dimension style that then says, hey, wait a minute, no, just kidding, you haven't actually done something to this, right? And then in addition to that, we didn't even get a complete dimension style. We still have to add the bearing, right? So dimensioning site plans in AutoCAD is really just a gigantic workaround, right? And again, civil engineers, you will, work with this a lot more often than the architects will. But architects will run into this, right? When I'm permitting a set of drawings, you have to have an architectural site plan, and sometimes you have a survey, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you have to go down to the county and you have to go get a plat map and you have to draw the property boundary yourself, right? And it has to be accurate. And so you do have to draw them, you do have to dimension them so that the city, when you go to permit, that they know what your property boundary is, right? And the exact bearing of all of your dimensions. So this is something that you will definitely run into, right? Everybody in this room will run into it. I'm not saying you'll do it every day, but it's something you'll have to do, okay? Let's do that one more time. Let's do it with this dimension up here. So I'm gonna list this piece of the drawing, LI, enter, click, enter. I get a bunch of information about this. And list, it's a command, it's an information command that you can really use on anything, right? If you're trying to find the name of something, the layer of something, the bearing of something, if you want to know if something's a block or, any type of information about anything in AutoCAD, if you list and select it, you can look at it, okay? So this one, I'm going to grab my bearing here. Control C, copy. Click, click. Control V, paste, space, enter, close. Okay. And you can do this to any property line. And a little look into the future, right? Your assignment will be to add dimensions to some of your site plans. Okay. All right. Let's see if I missed anything. I don't think I did. Oh, except for my LT scale here, right? The dashed lines. Where do the dashed lines go? LT scale. This is 180. So 180 is half of, let's look at my scale factor. 1/32. I'm gonna look at the back page of my book, 1/32. So 1/16 is 192. So we'll type 192. Regen. If that doesn't work, which it didn't, LT scale, enter. I'm gonna do half of that. We'll try 100. Enter. That didn't work. I'm gonna just, nope, you don't have to. Nope. Not, oh, yeah, okay, but my layers are good. So LT scale, enter, we'll do 50, nope, 25, nope, 12, we're starting to get something. I don't think this has anything to do with the idea that it's in decimal, but it might. 6, 3, why even did we change it? 1, right? There you go. Okay. All right, any questions on site dimension styles? Yep. Yeah. Oh, you needed it to be large. It needs to be done by, yeah. So that was the issue scale. So the dimensions are actually, so it's the right size, but the dimensions are actually reading it and but we're scaling it by 12. That's why you put that 1/12 factor in there.
So I did that. I'm just gonna
So do the, instead of linear, choose aligned, click, enter. Now just click on the line, hit spacebar, enter, oh, escape. Okay, click on line, okay, now hit enter. Okay, now click on the line. There you go, click, now zoom in there. There you go,
And that's definitely green, right?
yes, that's fine, right.
How would I scale back my dimension line after that?
Scale back your
So
dimension line.
yeah, so
Enter, hit enter. Okay, now click on the line, click. Oh, click again. Maybe your size plan was the right size in the first place and I told you wrong. Maybe it's a combination of weird things that happened. I think it was probably right in the first place. So, what was the problem before that you were
it was
having? I don't remember.
displaying like 2,460 inches instead of the 205.
It was saying 205 there though, right?
Yeah, on this one it says
So
205.
click that out. Let's look at your dimension style real quick. So modify, and then let's go to, you got that at 112. Let's go to text. So you do, oh, you're to click on your dimension style. That 330 seconds, 0.9, that looks right. Okay. Looks good. Okay, hit apply. Close. Okay. So hit OK again. And close that. So change it from 1/32. Do I have it at 1/16 or 1/32?
136.
Oh, I do have it 1/32. Okay. So let's try that again. So you're 1/32, and you're doing. You got. I think you're using the wrong dimension style though, right? So it's side dimension.
This is the original. I just tried to copy it from that again on the copy.
Okay. It's section.
We're on surveyor.
Now aligned. Click. Hit enter.
How are you?
Click the object. Click. So why is your text so gigantic?
No idea.
If we scale up that object, it won't be the right dimension. Right? Let's just try this. Yeah, so that is too big, obviously, you know that. So undo that, so unscale it. So the problem is not having to do with your actual site plan. Undo, undo, undo.
Oh.
Do zoom extends, click,
What's up?
double click the mouse. There you go. Okay, now do the dimension again.
Which?
It's because of the way you scaled it. So let's do your align dimension again. Enter. Click. Click again. So you've got your gigantic dimension out there, probably. Click again. See that? Oh, nope. I see your mouse right there. You've got some trouble going on. Let's see. For 60, okay, so we don't want that. Okay, so that's right. Okay, so your text size, 1/32 of an inch. It seems to be architectural. I think so. Nope. So something is wrong with your dimension style. It has to be because everything else looks good. Lines. You may just need to create a new dimension style and see from scratch and see if some what's. Okay, really good. That's amazing. I know, it's so weird. You just have to create a new dimension style and see what happens. That tells me 1/32 of an inch.
Is it because the style was created when it had the wrong scale factor added to it?
No, I don't think so.
Because it should just match
It
whatever
just
is.
matched whatever's there, yeah. Let's look at this. Okay, so that's right. Because that is about the right size. 1/16, 1/32, right? So you double that. That's the right size. Your text is scaling correctly. It's that your object, and I know, and your object actually looks about the right size because when I scale it at 1/32, right? That's how big it should be. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, because when I scale mine, it's about that size. So, hello.
What's that?
What's wrong with this? It's good. I'm creating new dimensions now here. Sorry guys, let me just figure this out here real quick. About an hour will be done. Mm-hmm. Dimension style, fit, rotated, oh, you got something. I might have to come back and look at it a little bit more. I can look at
Okay.
here. It's causing that. It's essentially, it's 12 times too large, but your object is not 12 times too large. Yeah, let me look at yours a little bit after looking at here. He's got some. He's got a tricky problem. Come back to it. All right. Any other questions on site dimensions so far? All right. Let's see. All right, so let's talk about, I want to talk about multi-liters next, okay? This is going to be a dimension as well. It's going to have to do with annotation. Well, it's not really a dimension, but it's annotation, right? And it's somewhat connected to dimensions, okay? If I go to annotate, multi-liters are right here, okay? And a multi-liter, it's essentially, you can use it with keynotes, you can use it as descriptive text, but essentially it's an arrowhead that points to something and you can add descriptive text or whatever to it, okay? So something like, let me open up our book here, let me pull up something to show you what it looks like. when I say the term leader, right? If I'm just looking at assignments, that's a leader right there, okay? These arrows, those are leaders. Looking for, here we go. Nope, we don't have any there. But we should have some somewhere else. There we go. So this, right, these are leaders, essentially. You can have leaders that point to objects, and then with descriptive text, you define what those objects are, okay? So leaders are used all over architectural drawings to add description, essentially. Okay, so let's talk about creating a style, a multi-leader style. And before we get going on this, I want to say these are also going to be annotative, right? So we're not going to do them exactly like the book says, right? Because they are going to be annotative in nature. But we are going to create a multi-leader style just like we would a text style or a dimension style, okay? So here I'm in multi-leader. If I use this flyout menu here again, click. Here's my multi-leader style manager, right? This is starting to look very familiar to you all, right? I have my standard style. I'm going to click on new, and let's call this multi-leader text. And I want this to be annotative, so I click on annotative, I hit continue, okay? We only have 3 tabs in the multi-leader dialog box, and the definition is actually much more simple than dimensions or site dimensions. We have the type of multi-leader I want. We have straight or spline, right? Do we want the line curved, or do we want it straight? I would say 99.9% of the time it's going to be straight, okay? What color do we want it? We want it by layer. We're going to leave line type and line weight alone. Oh, no, we're not. I lied. It's going to be by layer. By layer. The symbol will be a closed filled arrow. Okay. Looks good. The size of this, that looks pretty good. Sometimes I like to make it just the tiniest bit bigger, so 1 click up. Then I'm going to go to leader structure. We want 2 leader points. That means that I'm going to click once, click a second time, and then I'm going to generate text. Okay, so we want 2 leader points. We want to automatically include the landing distance from here to here. We want it annotative, meaning we're not going to set a scale, for this. It's going to be the appropriate size for whatever scale we decide to print at. Content. The multi-leader type is going to be mText, block, or none. So mText means that when the leader is generated, you can type text in. Okay, a block means that it's going to be more like a keynote. A keynote is going to be, you have a leader that looks like this, and sometimes we'll have text. And then sometimes we'll have a leader that looks like this, and you'll have a round circle, right? And it can have like a number 1 in it, or A, B, C, D. That's going to be a keynote, okay? So if you do want to have something like a keynote, you're going to add and you don't know what a block is yet, but you will soon. But you'll add a block to it that defines that bubble on the end. Text style, instead of just being standard, we have the site dimension style that we've already defined in here, so I'll just choose that. Keep horizontal. Text color will be by layer. We want horizontal attachment, meaning we want it to look horizontal. Okay. So leader connection, horizontal, and then middle top of line. That looks good. Middle top of line, that looks good. Okay, that's it, right? We have those 3 little dialog boxes, so if you're rewatching the video, here's the first one. Okay, here's the second one. Here's the third one. Looks somewhat like this. And I hit OK. Multi-leader text, click. I'm going to hit set current. Close that out. And now it's time for me to use it, right? So if I wanted to add my multi-leader text here, right? My annotative scale is set to 1/32. I click on multi-leader. I click on the object I want to point at. Click. Drag a line out. Click. And type text. Enter, enter. Oh, sorry, in this case I think you used to be able to do that, but now you have to hit close. Right, property line. Multi-leader, click. Click. You notice that I'm kind of using my object snaps to get these somewhat the same angle, hopefully the same angle. Click, click. Close editor, okay? This is a little bit of a mistake on my part, but if I click on this and I go to my layer properties here, you're gonna see it's on the property line layer, which is inherently dashed. So you probably noticed when I was somewhat stretching it, right? When I was placing this, that see how it somewhat becomes dashed. We don't really like that, but for today, I'm just gonna show you how to create them and you can put them on the right layer, right? If I wanted these to be at a different scale, I would change my annotation scale of my screen here, and I would add more of these leaders, okay? Leaders are really great in that they're fairly malleable. So if I click on one of them, right, I have a grip at the end here where I can click and it turns red, and I can move it. Click. I can click on this one, click on the end. When it's red, click again and move it, right? I can grab this leader, CO, copy, click, click, and I can copy it. If I want to edit the text, I click on the text very quickly twice, click, click. I can select it and write something like, oops, sorry, click, click. One prop line, right? Okay, when I'm finished, I can hit close text editor, okay? So I can move them, I can click on them, and I can grab these blue grips and click and drag it to wherever I want it to be, click again, and point it at whatever object needs to be pointed at, right? My best advice with leaders like this, number one, don't ever put it on a dashed layer, right? You'll put it on an annotation layer so that it doesn't look dashed. In fact, let me just do that. I should stop being lazy, right? Click on new layer, A-anno-dims. We'll make it magenta. Grab all these. There we go. Oh, of course, border, nope. We want it to be continuous, okay. Right? Okay, so a few things about these leaders, right? These are kind of, they're very helpful, they're very useful, they're very easy to generate, right? Some things about them, and I think just your drawings in general, you want to make sure that your drawings look nice and neat, that you're graphically able to read them, right? And part of that is making sure that things line up, that making sure that your leaders have somewhat of a similar angle to them, maybe if possible, making sure that your leaders line up, right? So when I look at this, okay, and this is, and I kind of laugh, but it's just going to happen when you're working in an office, right? Having your leaders kind of look like they're somewhat the same angle, right? It's very important, having them line up like this, okay? I can always tell, I give this spiel every semester, but I can always tell how advanced in a profession somebody is because, well, in architecture, because of their drawings. So if I look at your drawings and your leaders are lined up, text doesn't cross over different lines, your drawings look nice and neat and organized, and they're lined up and they're centered on the page, right? Your line weights are correct. I can just look at all of these different things and I can generally probably tell pretty close how far you are into your career, right? Just by how you draft in AutoCAD, right? Content aside, because there's different levels of content, meaning, you know, meaning how much information's in a set of drawings, right? Content doesn't necessarily mean anything, but how your drawings are actually put together and how annotation looks tells a lot about you, right? So making sure that things line up, making sure that, you know, your leaders are straight, making sure that when you print, your print is at the center of the page and looks nice, making sure that things are to scale, making sure that, you know, all of your text lines up. Really important, says a lot about you, right? And I think it says a lot about you even in terms of, you know, like a potential employer, right? Me looking at a set of drawings, there may be somebody who has a lot of content, maybe they have just a tiny bit more knowledge than you, but your drawings are way more readable and organized, right? Content can somewhat be taught. You can teach people a lot about architecture, right? But innately, if somebody is very organized, their drawings look nice and neat, they line things up, it looks designed, that's gonna really persuade me, right, in hiring somebody. So I guess maybe with that whole spiel, right? Drawings are important. Make sure things look nice and neat and they're all lined up. Okay. Any questions about multi-leaders? Right?
One question while we were designing.
Yeah.
When I went up, when you were making it slightly bigger than the default,
Uh-huh.
bringing up to 0.23,
Mm-hmm.
it didn't go up immediately. It went like slightly, it went up by a smaller decimal point.
Mm-hmm.
Why would that be?
It could be like than mine, you mean? Yours went up by
Yeah, like the arrowhead size.
It-
Actually, that was what.
It could be that maybe you have your precision set differently than me,
Oh, yeah.
and so it may go up and down at different increments.
And we're saving all these to our template. Right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Save them in your template. Do them in your template and save them. Yes. Okay. All right. So we now know how to dimension our site plans. We know how to create leaders, right? You will have an assignment that looks like this. This is on the server, our network, I guess I should say. And I've also put it in the assignment, but your assignment for this will not be to draw it, right? The geometry will already be there. You will be tasked with creating these leaders and adding them in and printing it, right? So you'll create a multi-leader style, you will add the leader, and you'll type this text in. Essentially, that will be the assignment part of it. Now, I don't mind if it looks exactly like this, right? I somewhat don't like actually how these leaders look, right? I think they look messy. I wish that all of these leaders, if possible, were somewhat the same angle as they move down, right? Even if you had to do one of them straight, right? Making sure that these are cleaned up a little, I think would be a lot better. And I don't really like how the text is here and the text is here. It kind of zigzags back and forth, right? Hurts my eyes, hurts my eyes. So I would try and line these things up, okay? All right. We have a couple of modification commands, and then I want to draw the bathroom, right? But I'm going to take just like a 5-minute break. Go get a cup of coffee today. Okay. You doing okay back there? No? Problem. You could also download an older version. Like I think version 7 is free, but version 8 I think is an old version. You might have one. Right back here. Oh, yes, why do you think that is? Okay, select your viewport. Oh, there's scale factor. 1 to 1. Okay, if you go back to model space, what is your annotation? What's that at? Oh, you have it scaled. Okay, so here's the problem. Sorry, go back to, click on your viewport again. Instead of 1 inch is equal to a foot, it's 1 to 1 scale. So this is going to be 1:1, 1 to 1.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Sorry, Shantae just thought of something. Usually a tile version of the Pro has SketchUp where you can use different UWG. But if you go yeah, they'll allow you to put it in tab. You have to reinstall it when you know what's that? So if you reinstall it, you can install the Pro version. Okay. Just a few more things for today, I promise. Let's see. What time is it? All right, so we are going to, let me pull up our schedule here. We're going to talk about trim and extend and chamfer and fillet today, okay? And I specifically wanted to do these for modification commands because you're going to use them to draw the bathroom drawing, okay? So let's talk about chamfer and fillet first. And I am going to open up, let's see, this PC, and CAD Common, Arch, 1310, fillet and chamfer. Okay. Here we go. All right. So fillet and chamfer are, they're similar modification commands that will allow you to alter kind of the edges or I guess slash corners of geometry. Meaning chamfer will allow you to make kind of diagonal-ish corners on something that was, you know, came to a 90-degree angle before, right? And where that will be helpful is, I'll just be honest, not in a lot of places. Chamfer is one of those commands I don't use a whole lot, but you will use it on your assignment just so that you can get to know it a little bit. Let's do this. Oh, there it is. Okay. Rotate view clockwise. There we go. Right? So this tank of this toilet right here that has kind of these angled corners right here, that is a chamfer. All right? So a chamfer will give you an angled corner, you know, not just on a rectangle, but on any two lines that once formed kind of a 90-degree angle, okay? Fillet, on the other hand, it does the same operation, but it allows you to put a radius on that corner, okay? So if I have two corners that come to a squared off edge like this, corner or line 1, line 2, it's a squared off corner there, and I want to round it, right? I will fillet that corner, all right? So let's talk about how these function, okay? This is a 5 foot by 2 foot 6 rectangle, and the dimensions are pointed out because scale is pretty important within these two commands, okay? And what I mean by that is, get rid of all this. if I have a rectangle like this, right, and let's say it's 1,000 feet, or we'll put an extra 0, 1,000 foot by 200 foot, right? And if my chamfer is going to be half an inch, right, if my chamfer is equal to 1/2 of an inch, how big is a half inch compared to 1,000 feet and 200 feet, right? It's tiny, 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 right? So that chamfer would just kind of look like that, and you wouldn't be able to see anything, right? But a chamfer that's maybe something like 50 feet, right, may be more recognizable. You'll be able to detect it easier. So it'll look like something like that, right, instead of not looking like anything happened, okay? The same thing applies to a fillet, right? So a fillet is a rounded corner, but it's based on a radius. If this is, say, again, 100 feet by 50 feet, and I do a radius on my fillet of, you know, 1/4 of an inch, that little fillet will just be this tiny, tiny, tiniest little rounded corner right there, right? It'll almost look like nothing happened. And what we want to see happen is, you know, maybe instead of 4 feet, it's going to be 20 feet. And it looks significant, somewhat like that, okay? So scale is important when you're choosing what radius or, you know, I guess really what dimension your angled area is going to be right here, okay? Excuse me. Hello. Okay, so let's talk about chamfer first. I'm going to go to home. And chamfer is located under the modify tool palette here. Fillet and chamfer share a menu. So we have fillet here, we have chamfer here, okay? And CHA, enter, is the shortcut for chamfer, okay? So I'm just gonna, I'm gonna click on chamfer, and I wanna go through the command. So it says, select your first line. Okay, click once. Select your second line, or shift select to apply corner, distance, angle, or method. Well, I don't really know much about this command, so I'm just going to click my second corner, and supposedly it chamfered. If it did, it was itty bitty, right? And the problem that I am having with that is that I hadn't specified a distance of my chamfer, okay? So I have an X direction in my chamfer, and I have a Y direction in my chamfer. So I'm going to initiate the command again, click on chamfer. I'm going to click on distance, click. I'm going to type in something like 1 foot, 12 inches, enter. 12 inches again, enter. And now I've just specified the X direction and the Y direction. Click, click. Ooh, it's really quite large. Click, right? So that just created a very large chamfer. I'm going to hit undo. Maybe I want it to be much smaller. CHA, enter. Distance, click. The distance, maybe we'll do 6 inches. Yeah, 6, enter, enter, click. And now I get a nice preview of what's going to happen. Click, click, and looks pretty good. Okay, so my distance is distance 1, distance 2, both 6 inches. Okay. If I hit enter again, I don't have to re-enter the distance on my chamfer if I just hit enter and reinitiate the command. It's going to remember the settings, right? So if both fillet and chamfer, whatever radius or distance you enter in there, it will remember that until you change it. Okay, so if I, for example, wanted to go all the way around this rectangle, click, click, enter, click, click, enter, click, click, oop, enter, right? It remembered that same distance, and I was able to get a uniform chamfer all the way around that rectangle. Okay. Now, if I am clicking on line, and I click, click, enter, click, click, and I have 2 lines that don't quite meet, right? I click on chamfer, click, click. Even though those 2 lines don't meet, I can chamfer them together to create that corner. Okay, so both chamfer and fillet will take an existing 90-degree angle corner. They will also take a corner that doesn't quite meet, where there's a gap, and it will create a chamfer, a dimensional chamfer. Okay, I don't use chamfer a whole lot. I actually haven't used it I'm not going to say ever. That's what it sounded like I was going to say. But I don't use it very often, right? In the case of this bathroom plan that we're going to be generating, right, that somewhat makes sense. But I don't use it that often, okay? But it's there. We have it in our tool palette if we want to use it, okay? What I do use all the time is fillet. And fillet is the same operation as chamfer, but it just creates a rounded corner instead of one that is kind of, you know, at an angle, okay? So fillet, I can choose fillet and select the first object, or I want to specify a radius, okay? So in chamfer, we're specifying 2 distances. In fillet, we're specifying a radius. So I click on radius, click, and let's do something like, this is 2 foot 6 by 5 foot. Let's do something like 6 inches again, enter, okay? Select my first object, click, select my second object, click, and it rounds that corner. And you're gonna notice that it rounded that corner over the top of this chamfered corner, right? I hit enter again, click, click, enter. Hey, David. Click. Oh, my dimension's in the way, so I can't quite get that one. We'll come back to that one. Click. Click. There we go. Okay. I'm going to delete that dimension. Now, fillet is the same as chamfer in that when I specify a distance for the radius, right, I put in 6 inches, it remembers that until I change it, okay? So I could go all the way around using enter and reinitiating the command with that same radius, okay? I'm going to do a fillet again, and I'm going to create a smaller radius defined. Click on radius. Let's do, instead of 6 inches, let's do 1 inch. 1, enter. Click, click, right? So there still is a radius, but it's significantly smaller, okay? Enter. Click, click, enter. Click, click, enter. Click, click, oop, click, click, enter. I use fillet all the time. One trick, not tricky thing, but one kind of trick of fillet is not only will it round corners, right? So when you're, especially for civil engineers, right? You're drawing curb cuts or site plans that need, you know, something with a specific radius because I'm making it up, but a right-of-way has to have a 13 or 12 foot radius, right? This would be really helpful because you can take 2 lines, you can join them together, but you can fillet them with a radius that's appropriate for whatever you're drawing, okay? What else is really nice about fillet is that if I choose my fillet radius, the same distance that apart that 2 parallel lines sit, so for example, DIST, if I measure these lines and I see that they sit 4 inches apart, right? F for fillet, enter, 4 inches, enter, click, click, I get a rounded edge.
So we're just focusing on the distance between the 2 lines.
Yes. Yep. So to get a rounded edge here, you mean?
Yeah.
The radius will be the distance apart of these 2 lines. Now, something really funny happens when I try to fillet 2 parallel objects like this to create that rounded edge, and they're polylines. For whatever reason, it won't work, right? So if I do PL polyline, click, click, right? Click, click. F for fillet, R for radius, and I do the distance they are apart. You see how I get a little, hey, no, you can't do that, right? It's because these 2 things are polylines. For whatever reason, it won't work with polylines, right? Even if it's just one short line segment. So when you're trying to round an edge like this, make sure that the lines that are here are actual lines, okay, not polylines.
Even
Yeah.
if we have a polyline, is it advisable to explode it first and use a blend?
That's a good question. Let me undo that. Let's do explode. X, enter. Let's see if it works now, right? Because ideally those should be undone. Okay, click. Oh, there you go, right? So I clicked on explode, I exploded them, even though really there wasn't anything to explode. They were just 2 lines and it worked. Yeah. Okay. So F for fillet, enter. R for radius, or click on radius, specify the radius, right? I can enter a dimension, but I can also click between 2 objects. Click, click, and that just measured it, right? enter, click, oops. There we go, enter, and it remembers that operation. By far and away, I mean, the radius with a fillet is great, okay? I can create these rounded corners. I can do the same thing that I did here, where if two lines don't quite meet, right, I can click on fillet or F for fillet, R for radius, click, you know, let's do 6 inches, enter. Click, click. When two lines don't quite meet, I can create a fillet. When two lines intersect, or even if they go past one another, I can also create a fillet, right? So if my lines somewhat go like this, I can also fillet. F for fillet, enter. R for radius, enter. 6 inches, enter. Click, click, and it trims that stuff off, okay? So what I love about fillet is it's kind of a nice cleanup tool, okay? And the best part of fillet actually is not that I can create lines that have a radius, it's that if I use the command fillet, F for fillet, enter, I click on radius. If I give it a 0 radius, 0, enter, the lines that I click, 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 square off, okay? That is the command that when I'm drafting in AutoCAD, I use 100 times a day, okay? So if I'm drawing a floor plan and I have lines that maybe cross over like this, F for fillet, R for radius, 0, enter, click, click. Isn't that nice, right? Enter, click, click, and it squares those off, okay? So if things don't quite meet, right, if these lines didn't quite meet, F for fillet, 0 radius, it squares it off, okay? So there's really 3 things that you can do with it. But again, by far, this is, and the next command the next 2 commands we're gonna be learning are trim and extend. Even above and beyond trim and extend, I'll use fillet to perform this operation, okay? F for fillet, enter. R for radius, enter. 0, enter. Click, click, there you go. Enter, click, click. F for fillet, R for radius, let's do 3 inches, enter. Click, click, enter, click, click, enter, click, click. Okay, so it's really just a way of being able to, you know, modify your geometry, okay? In the bathroom exercise, so in this exercise, if you create the outer boundary of this using lines, and then you offset them in, right? And you've maybe found this with other assignments, when you offset lines in, they don't always come in with these nice squared off corners, right? They come in and they have corners that don't quite meet. They look somewhat like that, right? And up until this point, you didn't really know what to do with lines like that because we didn't have any way to clean them up, okay? Fillet is gonna be that first tool that will allow you to clean those up. F for fillet, R for radius, enter. 0 for your radius, enter. Click, click, and it cleans those lines up. Okay, any questions so far? Okay, so fillet, chamfer, you'll be using that on this assignment, likely to clean up some of these corners, right? But the chamfer will be used to create the tank on your toilet here. Okay.
So, on the bathroom, let's go back to
What's that?
the bathroom.
Yeah. Oh, where is it? There it is. Okay.
So, this part that has an angle of 45 degrees down here.
Let's see. Oh,
Yeah, so is that, do you use a fillet or chamfer?
I don't think I use either one of those. Maybe a fillet with a 0 radius. So that's a good question. I think I know what you're getting at with that, right? So if I have a line that goes like this and I have another line that is somewhat coming in like that, right? Are you asking, can I fillet those and have it work right? Okay, so F for fillet, R for radius, 0, enter, and yes, I can. So I can click here and I can click there and it fillets it. So you could do that even at a 45-degree angle. Yeah. Okay. So,
Oh, I have a question.
yep, you're good.
Go back to the PDF.
Yeah.
So, what is the distance between this point and the other point?
This point and that point.
Yeah, no,
sorry, let me take a look here. Oh, well, we don't have a distance there, we just have an angle. So whatever 45 degrees would be that distance.
So we're just literally basically plotting what from here to here.
It's tricky, right? It's tricky. Let me talk about how I'm going to find that angle. Okay. I'm not going to measure it, essentially. So what Prince is asking is, so what is the distance between here, right? And maybe what is this distance here, right? Because I have my 7 foot, my 10 foot, my 10 foot, my 2 foot, my 2 foot, and then I don't really have a dimension here, other than I have a 3 foot window right there, right? And my answer is, I don't really know what that distance is, honestly. But I do know that if I start right here and I draw 2 feet, and then I create my 3 foot door, my 2 foot wall, my 10 foot wall, my 10 foot wall, my 7 foot length right there, whatever's left over is the right answer. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Is
So
that centered?
this window,
Yeah, we just have to assume it's centered, right?
yes. Yes. So then, right, once I get to here, I'll have a gap open. And ideally, if you drew everything correctly, then it should be the right distance.
Another question, so the door
Uh-huh.
from this point to the other part, the point of the door, doesn't really have a distance. So how do you just plot a 2 feet line?
Right, so this door panel right here is 3 feet. So the door, if it's open 3 feet, has to shut into an opening of 3 feet.
So my question is,
No, you're good. Yep.
I have it. Can I go?
Yeah, yeah. Let me take a look.
Talking about this line, right? Do we just come in model space anywhere in model space here and just draw like a point here?
Yeah, you just start drawing anywhere in model space. Yeah, I'll start the drawing. Let me go over this last command and we'll start the drawing so you can see. Yep, I think it's all good questions, right? Hold on. All right, so one more set of commands and then we'll get to drawing this bathroom plan, okay? And the commands we're gonna finalize our lecture with today are going to be trim and extend. Trim and extend, essentially fillet is trim and extend all in one command, okay? Let me open up a quick drawing here for us to look at. Hold on one second. Let's see. There we go. All right. Okay, so let's talk about trimming and extending. And let me just probably show like the most classic definition of trimming and extending and how we are going to make this work, essentially. Okay. There we go. There we go. Okay. So trim and extend. Trim and extend along with fillet are going to be kind of your best friends. Okay. And there's somewhat the long way of going about trimming and extending and the short way of going about trimming and extending. And I think I used to kind of teach the long way, but I just don't think anybody ever does it, honestly. And so we're going to go just the short route for trimming and extending. Okay. But with that said, I want to explain the idea behind the two. Okay. Trimming will allow you to take geometry like these lines and trim them off at a certain point. So if I don't want these green lines to extend beyond this yellow line, I would trim them off, okay? If I want to trim in between two objects, meaning I have this line and I have this line and I want to trim out this line so it goes away, I would use trim, okay? So trim, the command up here, trim and extend. Again, I don't like icons, so you won't normally see me going up to find the trim and extend icon. I will type in TR, enter, enter for trim, and I'm going to do 2 enters, and I'll tell you why in a minute. And then I have extend, EX, enter, enter. Okay, so trim, TR, enter, enter again. Any object that I click on, do you see senses the next boundary where it can be trimmed off at. So right now I click on that edge and it gets trimmed off at this circle. Click. If I click on this, it extends back to that rectangle. Click. Now you have to somewhat select them in order, meaning if I just trim this piece off, then that piece doesn't go away. And because that piece doesn't extend beyond the circle, it can't be trimmed anymore. It has to be deleted. Okay? So click, click. This is a little bit convoluted or more complicated than it needs to be, right? But click, click. There you go. Okay? I can also, let me show you, the way that I was trimming was called a pick. So TR, enter, enter, and I just picked on the line I wanted to trim, right? I could do that line, I could do this line, I could do this line, I could do that line. I could also, if I wanted to grab things all at once, create a crossing window to trim. So click, drag over the edge, and you see how I grab them all and trim them off. I'm gonna hit undo, 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 undo. I'm gonna undo these just so we can do them again. TR, enter, enter. So I could pick, click, or I could click, drag a window over these and trim them off. Okay? I think the most common thing that you will be trimming for now will be just your walls, right? TR, enter, enter, click, click. If you'd offset a polyline to create your walls and there were these messy pieces inside, click, click, escape, escape. Now this line right here I can't trim, TR, enter, enter, because it's just a piece of line. It's not overlapping anything. So I click on it and hit delete. Okay? This line is connected to that line, and this line intersects those two lines. So TR, enter, enter, click. Okay? So click, I could drag a selection window over them, click, 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 whoop, click. There we go. Okay? So that's trim. And then we have the opposite of trim, which is extend. EX, enter, enter. Okay? And extend will allow you to take lines and extend them to a boundary, right? So EX, enter, enter. And whatever end of the line I click on, it extends to the next closest boundary. Click, 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 right? And you'll probably start noticing that not only does it extend to the nearest boundary, but it's successive. So if I hover over it after I extended it once, it keeps going, right? Click, 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 right? And that's extend. Okay, TR, enter, enter. I'm going to drag a selection window over those. It trims out between whatever two lines it senses on the outside boundaries. Okay. Now I trimmed out those lines. Let me extend these lines. EX, enter, enter. Click, click, click. T, escape, escape. TR, enter, enter, trim, and I trim out that little piece, right? Now I'm going to hit undo. And you're likely going to now see why, oops, undo, why I kind of like fillet, because it's like trim and extend in one command. I can extend, 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 trim, trim, or I could F for fillet, enter, R for radius, 0, and I can click, click, enter, click, click, right? It's kind of a much cleaner method of squaring things off, right? So fillet is kind of trim and extend all in one piece, okay? But trim, TR, enter, enter, will allow you to trim pieces off, click. Now, one thing I want you to notice about trim, TR, enter, enter, okay? Let me undo a few of these things that I've done here. TR, enter, enter. Okay. If well, let me do extend. EX, enter, enter. If I'm using extend and I hover about this half of the line, it extends over here. If I hover about this end of the line, it extends over there, right? So when I'm doing this, I sort of imagine kind of an imaginary midpoint of these lines, and I want to hover in front of that midpoint to establish which side of the line is extending, right? So if I hover over here, it goes that way. If I hover over here, it goes that way. And if I'm somewhere in the middle, right, you can see it kind of goes both directions. So click, 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 click. There you go. Okay. Again, trim and extend modification commands, really great for cleaning up geometry, right? They're commands that I use all the time when I'm drafting in AutoCAD, but I would say that by and far, I end up using fillet a lot more because fillet will trim and extend depending on the condition I'm using it on, right? So that example I drew over here that's gone now because I undid it, fillet will just sense what needs to happen. That's why I like it, okay? Right, any questions so far on trim and extend? Okay, I'll just spend, I won't take too much more time. I'll take like 15 minutes and I'll start drawing the bathroom, okay? Let me close these out. Yep,
I have to go pick up my son at 4:30, like pretty soon. Like I have
Okay.
to leave at 4:30.
I'll hurry then.
No, it's okay. Like, I just don't want to like leave and then make you
Nope.
like.
You're okay, you're
Yeah.
good, you're good. It'll all be on the recording too, so if you want to
Yeah,
review it, you
I
can.
know that. So.
Okay, good, good. All right, so let's talk about, we'll draw the bathroom. I'm going to try and get this on my screen. I need one of those like mega screens, right? So I can just have everything on here at one time.
Projector.
That is true, but I feel like I have to squint. I mean, I don't know about everybody else, but to squint with a projector. Anyway, okay. What's that?
You could put like 10 monitors.
10 monitors all filled up here. It's a dream, right?
That's actually what they have in like the Lifetime Activity Center. They have rooms
They
where
do?
they have like 3 projectors on each side of the room.
Really?
Yeah,
Huh, I don't think I've ever seen that.
it's pretty cool. It's in one of my classes.
Huh.
Yeah.
So you can see different things. That's
Yeah, so
cool.
pretty much everyone can see from any angle from the classroom.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Huh. We're not that fancy yet here, right? That's funny. I think of that, and I think of all the cords I'd have to manage, right?
Oh.
I mean, look at this gigantic mess on the floor here. Okay, so let's draw this bathroom. Okay, so when I start this is my homework, right? And again, I think probably the most confusing part of any homework is the first 10 minutes, right? Sitting down, getting started. Once you get going, you're great. You can keep moving, but it's just getting started. So I would start with your template file, right? If you, for that assignment that we generated, and if you're keeping it up, it'll be even more helpful. But I would start with your template file. If you don't have your template file up to date or you don't have it anymore or whatever, I would just go to File, and we're going to click on New, and we're just going to choose ACAD DWT. I'm going to open that up. This is a blank file, so there are no settings in it, right? So immediately when I'm drawing something, if I don't use my template, I have to set it up. So I have to type in my units, enter, right, which would have already been done in my template file. Hint, hint. Okay. I have to, what else do I have to do? Oh, I have to create some layers. So architectural, yep, we want an architectural. Did I not change it to yes, I did. Okay, yep. 130 seconds, good. Yep. So I'll create some new layers like A dash wall and A dash wall. Yep. Decimals. Yep, that's right. A dash wall, and then we'll just create a few today, right? A dash door, and if you don't, I know these by heart, right, already, so I can immediately pick the colors, but you all who don't know them very well, you're gonna have to look up the colors of the layers, so it's already a pain in the neck. A dash floor dash P fix, plumbing fixtures, and we will make that magenta, and then we have some millwork here. A dash casework, right? And we'll make that, oops, not that one, this one, we'll make that blue, right? So I have to set my units, I have to create some layers. If they were already in my template file, I wouldn't have to do that. I could just open it up and start working, right?
What was that last layer?
The casework, A-case.
So before the casework, what was the layer again?
It was P-fix, plumbing fixtures. So like toilets and sinks and good stuff like that. And then, right, if I hadn't kept up my template, I'd have to create a text style, and I'd have to create a dimension style, right, to do my dimensions. We probably won't get to dimensions today, but I'll draw this for you. And probably a window layer. I actually probably need a window layer. So new layer, I forgot, A dash glazing, G-L-A-Z, right? Because we call windows glazing in architecture. So we'll make that cyan. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we created 5 layers, right? Not forgetting the fact that, you know, I have page layouts that I could have created, dimension styles, text styles, multi-leader styles. And if you put those in your template, you only have to create them once. And then every time you start a new assignment, they're there for you to use. Okay. So let's start with walls. Click, click. My wall layer becomes current. I'm going to close this out. And I want to draw my floor plan now, right? And again, you know, I somewhat always look at a drawing and I decide how I'm going to draw it first, okay? And I think I'm going to start here and draw the outside of my walls first. But then I think, well, I don't know where that is, so I actually think I'm going to start here. So I'm going to start at 2 foot. I'm going to leave a 3 foot opening and then continue around. Okay, so I have my wall. I'm in architectural. Okay, L for line, or polyline. We could do a polyline if we wanted. So now you're saying, well, where do I start in model space, right? You can start anywhere. It doesn't really matter, okay? So I click, I move in the direction I want to go, I turn my ortho on, and I type 2 foot, enter. I don't really like seeing this. Do you see how it's getting in the way of my drawing, right? So I'm going to go to turn this UCS off. I go up to View, Display, UCS icon. It's a toggle. So if I click on, it turns it off. Okay. And now I'm going to go back to line and okay, now I have to create a 3 foot opening. I'm just going to draw a 3 foot line, 3 foot, enter. And you're thinking, well, wait a minute, there's not a line there, right? There's a door. That's okay. I can go back and delete it when I'm done. So I have my 2 foot length, my 3 foot length. I'm going to continue on. 2 foot, enter. I'm going to move this direction. 10 foot, enter. 10 foot, enter. Core. And I'm going to move. I'm going to move this direction. I'm going to type 7 foot, enter, right? And then whatever's left over is that angle. Yep.
So after the 2 foot, you just attach another line, like a 3 foot line to it.
Yep. Yep. You just draw all the way around in line segments. And then when I'm done, I delete that out and draw the door. Okay. So I'm here. I'll start over again so you guys can kind of stay caught up with me. L for line, right? Click, 2 foot, enter, 3 foot, enter, 2 foot, enter, and 10 foot, enter, 10 foot, enter. And I might have to stop. I might have to hit escape and you know, zoom my drawing in and out. That might need to happen. 7 foot, enter, and then whatever's left over here, I'm going to press F8, turn off my ortho, and you know, click my endpoint, click escape. Okay, so now I have the general outline. Here's my 3 foot door. I'm going to click on it and hit delete. Right. This is a little bit different than Revit. Those of you that have taken Revit or will be taking Revit soon, right? In AutoCAD, when you create geometry, you have to create other geometry that you then delete to help you get dimensional geometry you're going to keep. Okay? Yep.
So did you turned off your auto here?
Uh-huh.
And then you connected the 2 foot line?
Yep. F8. Turn it off and connect it. Yep. So if you have a little bit of extra geometry, you draw a few extra lines, that's okay because that's how AutoCAD works. Okay? All right, now I need to offset this, and it says down here, all walls are 4 inch thick. So I'm just going to offset all of these lines 4 inches. So O for offset. And if you forget the command, you're like, what is the offset command? I don't remember. Just start typing it. Offset, and it reminds you what it is, right? Enter. Well, what is the distance? 4, enter. Select the object to offset. Okay. Click. Move over to the side I want to offset it, which is in. Click. And it's a chain command. I can keep going. Click, click. And it remembers. Click, click. Click, click. Click, click. Click, click.
Why didn't you just make that a line?
I could have, but then I couldn't have trimmed or filleted or extended it, right? Yes, I could have. I could have created a polyline, and then I could have offset it one time, right? And it would have worked. Yep. See ya. All right, so now I look at this and I think, well, I've got a bunch of messy lines that need to be cleaned up, right? I could do trim, TR, enter, enter, and I could click, click, and trim those off. I could also fill it with a 0 radius. F for fillet, enter. R for radius, enter. 0, enter. And I could click, click, and look how nicely it cleans those up, right? Enter, and it remembers the command, remembers the distance. Click, click, enter. Click, click, enter. Click, click. There we go. Good, good. Okay. So now we have to kind of finish these little walls up. So we go to line, click, and I'm going to click, click, escape, enter, click, click, escape, and we have the outline of our walls here. Except now I have this little window that I need to generate, right? And let me say this, you'll get used to command kind of how you use commands together to draw things, but when you're first using AutoCAD, it's really hard to think, okay, I need to create this window. So it needs to be centered, I need to create an opening, right? How do I do all of these things? And in my mind, I'm thinking, well, you know, I'm going to draw a line, L-I-N-E. I'm going to draw it right at the midpoint of this. Click. And I'm going to use my perpendicular snap, or the midpoint of the one, you know, parallel to it, click, click, escape. So I've just established the center point of those two walls, right? I know this is 3 foot wide, so if I offset this half of 3 feet and half of 3 feet on either side, I can get the 3 foot opening. So O for offset, enter, 18 inches, enter. 18 inches is half of 3 feet. So click, click, yep, 18, click, click. Again, I have this little extra piece of geometry, right? But that's okay. I used it to generate something else, and then, you know, geometry is free. I can use as much as I want, right? So I'll use it, then I'll delete it. Okay, so I'm going to click on it, hit delete. Now I'm going to trim, TR, enter, enter. And I'm going to click, click, and trim out an opening there, okay? And I'm trimming out the opening because the line weight that I have for a window is lighter. It's a thinner pen than the line weight for a wall. So if I were to just draw my window lines in here over the top of my red lines, my wall lines, they'd be obscured by my wall lines, right? So I'm going to change my layer to glazing. L for line, click, click, escape, enter, click, click, escape, enter, click, click, escape. There's my window. Right? So endpoint to endpoint, endpoint to endpoint, center point, midpoint to midpoint. And there's my window. Don't forget to save your drawing as you're drawing because you don't want it to be deleted by accident. Okay. So now it's time for me to, let's draw the door. Okay. I'm going to change to my door layer. And I'm not always really great about changing my layers. Sometimes I remember, sometimes I don't. But I know that I can always go back and change them later. Okay. So this door is essentially, it's a rectangle. It's 3 feet, you know, maybe by like a foot, 3 feet, or it's not a foot, an inch, another inch there. And then we're going to create an arc. Okay, so L for line. I could, in fact, let's do a polyline, PL, or polyline. Click, move in the direction I want to go, 3 foot, which is also 36 inches. Enter. I'm going to turn my ortho on. F8, 1 inch. Enter. I'm going to come down here and hover, and do you see how I use my object tracking to discover where that point is? Click, click, escape. And there we go, right? Now it's time for me to use to create my arc.
From the upper point, you say 3 feet.
3 feet, yep, exactly. Now here's where me who's all about shortcuts and being very precise and fast at AutoCAD, I don't like, I've talked about it a million times, I don't like arc. I don't like drawing it. I don't think it functions very well. Shantae's laughing because she's taken AutoCAD from me like, what, a year ago? And I still have the same opinion. But this is a case where I will go kind of the roundabout way to get around arc. I'm going to click on circle. I'm going to click my center point of my circle, drag it out, click. Okay. There's my circle. But it's, you know, I have too much of it. It's excessive. I have all of that other stuff around the circle, so I need to trim it off. T, R, enter, enter. But now we know how to trim, right? Oops, T, R, enter, enter. Click, 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 click. Oh, I went a little bit too far. Click, there we go. So I've got my door. Let's see here. Oh, come on. There we go. Okay, now I'm gonna do the bathtub. So this bathtub is a rectangle and it is 30 inches by 60 inches. So rectangle, but I need to change my layer to P-Fix. It's a plumbing fixture. Rectangle, click. I'm going to click my first point here. Here is one of the few times that I use relative coordinates to generate something in AutoCAD, rectangle. I use, whenever I'm creating a rectangle, I generally will use relative coordinates. So I'm going to type at, in the X direction it's 60, 30 is in the Y. Enter. Okay, so I just created a rectangle. And now, let's zoom in here a little bit. Oh, come on, there we go. Okay, I have a 3-inch offset, but you're thinking, well, but the corners are rounded. Well, we can fillet those corners with a radius, right? So I have my 30-inch by 60-inch tub, and it's offset in 3 inches. So O for offset, enter. 3 inches, so 3, enter. Click, click. There's my tub. Okay. Now I need to fillet those corners. And right here it shows me a radius of 3 for my fillet. So F for fillet, enter. R for radius, enter. 3 inches, enter. Click, click, enter. Click, click, enter. Click, click, enter. Click, click, enter. Okay. Well, a couple of things that I do in AutoCAD. I do things all at the same time, meaning if I am kind of needing to fillet a few things and they have all the same radius, right? I fillet them all at the same time and I continue to do it until I'm done. And I hit enter in between commands, right? I don't escape and redefine a command again to start it back over because that will involve me stopping, hitting escape, reinitiating the command, defining it, and continuing on, right? So you'll see me F for fillet, R for radius, enter, and then I'll do all the filleting that I need to be done, and I hit escape, right? I drew the whole outline of my bathroom here, right? All in one kind of command. Then I offset it. Then I did the inside set of lines, right? So I do tasks that have kind of similar actions or functions all at the same time so that I don't get, so I don't have to stop myself and say, oh, hey, I'm going to go create some layers now. I'm going to do something else in the middle of it, right? It kind of disrupts your workflow. Okay, let's draw our millwork here. Okay, so I have this line for my millwork and I have a sink here and then we have a dashed upper cabinet here. So that actually reminds me I need to create a new layer. And I'm going to call this A-case-upper. And I'm doing a new layer because this line is still casework but it needs to be dashed. This line is casework and it does not need to be dashed. So a case upper, I'm going to load a hidden line weight. Okay, click, okay, okay. So now I need to draw a line and I need it to be 2 feet off of this original wall. I'm gonna use the from command. I could have offset this line in 2 feet and trimmed it. Or yeah, 2 feet and trimmed it. But I want to use the from command because we haven't done that for a while. L for line, shift right click from, let me do that again. I can't talk while I do it or I get lost in the command. L for line, enter, shift right click from, shift right click from this point, click over 24 inches, enter. Click, click. It gave me a little bit extra, TR, enter, enter, trim, click. Now this line is about midpoint, so that's about 12 inches. So I'm gonna offset 12 inches, enter, click, click. But this needs to be on that dashed millwork layer, right? So I'm gonna change this to a case upper. And it does look dashed. 12 inches. Now I need to create this 20-inch diameter sink. It's a big sink right there. Okay, I'm going to change my layer to case, no, P-fix. Oh, I think I had these on the wrong layer. I did, P-fix. I'm going to change that to casework. That's casework upper. Looks good. All right, so this sink is going to be drawn at the midpoint of this line. So I click on circle, I click the center point, and I want this to be a diameter because I have a diameter specified, so I click on diameter, click, 20 inches, enter, and there's my sink. Okay, trim, TR, enter, enter, trim that out.
So you plotted the circle from the midpoint?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
The diameter is 20 inches.
20 inches, yep. Okay. Final thing, I'm just going to draw the toilet and then we'll stop. The toilet does involve an ellipse, which we haven't talked about, so I'll run through that really quickly. But before I do that, oh, we didn't talk about chamfering within the command. Well, I'm not going to get into that. Anyway, so let's draw the toilet. The toilet is going to consist of a rectangle with a 2-inch chamfered corner and an ellipse here. Okay. So let me draw this 8-inch by 24-inch rectangle. I'm going to click on rectangle, click, I'm going to type at 24,8, enter. Right, that's a relative input, and it was at 24,8 because I went over 24 inches and then up 8 to create that. Okay, now I'm going to chamfer those corners. It's a 2-inch chamfer. Okay, CHA, enter. Distance, click, 2 inches, enter, enter again, click, click, enter, click, click, enter. And by enter, I mean space bar or the enter key, right? Click, click, space bar, click, click, chamfered it. Okay. We haven't done M2P for a while either. Let's do M2P. You guys are probably like, what's M2P, right? The best tool ever. I want to take this tank and I want to center it from between these 2 points. Okay, I could click on it, I could measure this and figure out the midpoint. I could draw a line across here and center it, but I could also do M2P. M for move, enter. I'm moving it. I'm going to click the midpoint, click. Now to center it between these 2 points, I'm going to shift right click, mid between 2 points. Shift right click, mid between 2 points, click, 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 and it centered it.
Wow.
Nice, right? Undo. I always, funny enough, I actually kind of forget about that command a lot of times, and I end up like drawing a line here, right? And then drawing or moving this to the midpoint of the line, or, you know, doing something else to kind of establish that midpoint, because I always forget about this. M for move, enter, select, enter, click base point, shift right click, M2P, click, click. Yeah, you're good. There it is. Okay. The final thing we'll do is the ellipse, and then I'll let you guys kind of fine tune it with the dimensions and all that good stuff. Yep.
So you, M2P, you just type M2P in there or what?
You don't type M2P. So if I hit undo, let me undo this. M for move, enter, select enter, click the midpoint, click. Now I want to move it. I'm going to shift, right click, and you click on M2P. And then you pick your first point, click, second point, click, and it centers it. No math involved.
When you pick a bit from this, right?
You pick the points are going to be the beginning point and the end point of the space you want to center it in. Okay, one final thing, the ellipse, and then we'll be done for tonight. So I'll go over this quickly. Here's the ellipse command right here, okay? If I click on the ellipse, let me just show you how it works. We're going to specify a center, okay? Click. Specify an endpoint of axes, okay? So essentially they want the length of this first. So that would be this length, 1'8", right? So they're looking for the length. So I'm going to type 1'8" is 20 inches. So 20 inches, enter. Now it's asking me for half the distance of this width. 1'4", that's 16 inches, right? So half the width, right? It's essentially a radius is 8 inches. So 8, enter. Oh, what did I do wrong? Let's see, what did I do wrong here? Did something wrong. Specify the center. Oh, I needed to do half. I'm sorry. Center of ellipse. Click. So it wants the end point. So the end point from the center, right? So that's 20 inches. 10 inches is to the end. Sorry. So we're going to do 10 inches. Enter. And then it wants the second sort of radius endpoint will be half of 1'4", which is 8 inches. So I'm going to type in 8. Enter. And there's my ellipse. Yep. Okay. The ellipse, click. It's asking for a center point. Click. Now it's asking for an endpoint of axes, and then it will ask for another endpoint. But essentially the endpoint is from the center to there, right? And then from the center to there, the width, okay? So what it's asking me for is half of that distance. 1'8" is 20 inches. So half that distance is 10 inches. So the first one distance I'll type in is 10, enter. The second distance is half of that 1'4", which is 8 inches. 8, enter. Okay. Well, try it again. We'll do a little bit more of this because I'll probably go over the dimensions again next time. So I've done it a little bit. I don't think it looks right. Let me do it one more time actually. Click. The center point, click. Half of 20 inches is 10 inches, enter, and then 8 inches, 16, 8, yeah, there we go. I typed in something wrong. M for move, I'm gonna grab it, and then just plop it right there. Okay. Okay. So, your assignments, I think hopefully I published them. I published quite a few. You'll have a little bit of time to work on them, right? You're going to have, well, I haven't published them, I guess. Okay, so I will publish them. You're going to have the multi-liter one that you have to do. In fact, yes, that one, ta-da. And this one, I'll let you look at them and then we'll go over them again next time, okay? So we're going to have circle trim. We'll open that one. Offset, we'll open that one up. Ruler, yes. They're not terrible assignments, so there's about 4 of them, right? But let's see. So we've got.
We don't have class next Wednesday.
You're right. So that'll be even a good work day, right? To come in and work, because I will be at the Habitat build first, and then I'll be at the U at their design critique. So you do have a few things to draw. The bathroom, of course. You've got this to draw, which kind of tests your skills on a bunch of things. You've got circle trim, ruler. This is an offset assignment. And we have another offset assignment, okay? Let me remind you, you can measure these things, right? So these are 1-to-1, so if you print them out, you can measure them if you can't quite figure them out. But the idea is that you use offset, here, that you use trim and fillet to achieve a lot of these, right? So this one's called circle trim exercise. So you're going to generate circles, you're going to trim, you're going to fillet, okay? You're going to draw circles. You're probably going to have to divide a few things up and draw these, right? These are a little tricky-ish. But like this one, you look at it, it's a triangle, which we know how to draw. Here's a secondary triangle, which we know how to draw. Then all the lines inside are trimmed out, right? So you're drawing kind of these little shapes that test your ability to trim and extend and do all that good stuff. So I'll let you get started. I'll have these due after we meet again, so that if you do have any questions, we can draw a few things in class. Okay? Okay, that is all.